Boy, it's been a busy day already. I was at the station at 2 o'clock this morning and then stayed here till about 7 a.m. With tornado warnings and tornado coverage going on. And now we're quickly flipping the script from that to nice weather over the next couple of days and then talking about cold and maybe even some substantial cold on the way, which is why I wanted to give an update in the video format here. Mainly because I haven't given one in a couple of days, but certainly that is a big thing that's on my mind. So you're going to have to forgive me if I get lost or sidetracked here in this video because it's been a long day already. But let's dive on into it as we go into our water vapor. We can already see the setup for what is potentially headed our way going into next week. It's not going to be this week where the extreme cold starts to come down, but you can see how the pattern's already starting to play out. So a cold front there, cold front here. And then let's change our colors on over to, let's put red on there and hit OK. So we've got a low pressure system right here, and we got a low that's working in right here. And basically what's going on is that we're setting up these trough axes and we're setting up a blocking ridge up across Greenland, and that's going to force the weather pattern to basically shift so that we force Arctic air down into the lower 48. And that setup begins this week, which is why the confidence in next week's cold is already there. Now, the question marks as to how active the storm pattern remains with a dry air mass in place across the lower 48 leaves me skeptical on seeing a bunch of snow across the lower 48. However, the typical places that do see snow, so the higher elevations and then downstream where clipper systems typically bring snow, I think you're definitely set for some snowfall. As far as a coastal low coming out of the Gulf and running up the coast, that's something that is going to have to be timed out with that energy sliding underneath the ridge. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. So I'm a little skeptical as to whether or not we're actually going to see that type of thing set up. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So what is the setup we've got going on right now? Well, high pressure system starting to develop basically right here. And we've got our first trough set up like that. So this is what was responsible for our severe weather this morning that is now exiting the coast. It's working up into this area. And you remember back when I posted all of that graphical information out on my socials that this is the first setup. So this was our first, actually second piece of energy because we already have a low up there. So this is moving toward that other low. It will combine. This one's going to work basically like that. And because of all this dry air that's down here, we're probably not going to see much out of this low pressure system. So as that starts to work down into basically that path, and you can see how that is the storm path at the moment, that'll work up and it'll combine with these two pieces of energy that are stuck. Because basically what we're doing is setting up a ridge here. So what is eventually going to happen is our little high pressure here, it's going to set itself up right about there. And keep in mind that that is flow like this. And then we set up our high here. So again, that is flow just like this. And what does that do? Well, that makes the storm track go like this. That's what happens. And then if you have low pressure systems up here, big low pressure systems up here, all you're doing is funneling the air right there down into the lower 48. And if you get breakdowns in this ridge, this can even expand back off to the west. Then you can just get the whole country in the cold as long as this high pressure ridge holds on. So sometimes you don't need the flip of the pattern. You can actually get a full trough all across the lower 48. It doesn't happen all that often, but it certainly is possible. And this is one of those setups where I could see that happening for a time or period or two as we go throughout January. It's a pretty remarkable pattern, to be completely honest, as far as the signal goes, the strength behind it, and what we have set up here. So seeing this starting to play out and seeing how this is going to play into next week has a lot of Mets concerned about how cold the air is coming down into the lower 48. It's been a while since we've had a winter where we had harsh temperatures across even into the deep south. It's been a long, long time for that. So this could be significant cold. It could be significant cold for our area too. So that's why I wanted to jump on here. For those that are looking at this and wondering about the setup, we can go through it. There's our storm system. Here comes our dry storm system. So our first shot of cold this week starts to take place about midnight on Tuesday. I think something else is happening around midnight on Tuesday, but I'm not quite sure. As that air does start to filter on through, it'll be with us throughout this week. This week, nothing crazy. We'll have another cold front slide on through about Thursday into Friday. It should be a dry front. You can see that happening right there. And then this starts to modify that air mass as we get our next storm system to come in. And I'm a little skeptical that this is going to be as far north as the modeling is saying right now. But if it does end up getting this north, we could see the temperatures, at least for a day or two, warm up quite nicely for us. The problem is that the Arctic pattern is loading as we go throughout this week. So by the time we get to next week, we already have much, much colder air starting to seep into the lower 48 with the same pattern in place. So it's able to actually tap into that Arctic air. So you can see as we move this forward going into next week, that's when the dangerous cold starts to take aim into our area, and we start to set up that classic pattern where we've got the warm air running like that. We get our deep trough going like that, and then we have our big blocking ridge up here, keeping the storm path basically doing this. And continuing like that. And if you're wondering, look at this flow and look at this Arctic cold. I mean, literally cross-polar flow down into Canada and then right across basically snow-laden areas where dry air is going to run over the snow and just get colder and colder and colder. And then that's just going to deepen down into the lower 48. So significant cold could be on the way next week. The modeling certainly suggesting that from the GFS to the Euro, even the ensembles are highlighting that. And even if we don't get record-breaking type of cold to work in our area, it's still going to be significantly cold, maybe highs for several days, possibly even over a week, into the 40s or even upper 30s, and lows down into the 20s every night. So hard freeze is seeming more and more likely, which is the concern. Now, for those that are like, well, you stopped this right before it shows snow. Yeah, I did. I stopped it right before it shows snow. But you can see this, and if you think back to when I said the possibilities to see snow across the south were the 4th and 5th, with that weak trough that's coming through later on this week, that's really only going to bring some moisture to the higher elevations. So going into Tennessee and the North Carolina and then Virginia's, that's where we could see a little bit of flakes this week. And then I said again, check back on maybe the 6th through 9th or 7th through 12th, somewhere in that time frame. And we might have multiple opportunities there. But if you're wondering for a setup for us to get snow, not saying that this is going to verify, but if you're wondering for a setup for that to happen, this is how you do it. You bring in deep Arctic air into the lower 48, and then you get a low pressure system to work across the Gulf of Mexico. Preferably for us, we'd have to have the low centered somewhere around Tampa to get that moisture to override the cold air that's in place enough for our precip to fall as snow and not sleet or freezing rain, which it's a little more typical to do here just because the Gulf of Mexico is really warm. It's hard to cool it off, and it's really easy to slide that marine layer air just a little bit north. If you don't have a consistent north wind helping to push that warm air back out over the Gulf. So if you want a setup for snow, this is how you do it. You have to have deep Arctic air coming down to the country. You have to have it in place, and then you need a Gulf low to work across basically the Tampa area and then up into the Gulf Stream. That being said, the snow chances, real snow chances, are probably limited really, again, to our higher elevations and through here, because this is going to be a very dry air mass. So unless we start to see some kind of storm pattern developing down here, or we're sliding it underneath that ridge, I would say these are kind of fantasy wishes. They're pieces of energy that the model is sliding up and underneath this ridge and then going under the trough and combining as a Gulf low. That usually doesn't happen. What you need is something to go under the ridge in the west, the subtropical jet, to propel it across, and then maybe get a Gulf low to try to develop somewhere around Corpus Christi or Brownsville, Texas, and then work across the Gulf. That's where you get big Gulf lows and Gulf snows, and then working up to a Hatteras low and up the coast. This pattern, that is a real possibility. However, this is so far off at this point in time, I don't think it is a reality. So the cold, definitely concerning signal, and strong one at that. So that is the concern. The snow, that would just be something that would be kind of novelty to happen on top of that. And if there's something serious, of course, we would fine tune it then. But we're a long, long way away from that. So you trend that snow or snow chances or cold chances just like you would with hurricane activity. We basically trend. We're going to see kind of a windshield wiper effect over the next couple of days for sure. And I'm willing to bet, run to run, this model or this snowstorm down here in the deep south probably bounces around quite a bit too. It may disappear just because it's probably not a reality at this point in time. When it becomes a reality, of course, I'll start talking about it. But that's what we got for now. Cold is on the way. Prep for it. Use this week because you really do have this week to prep as we get into this coming weekend. If we're still saying, hey, extreme cold's coming, then it definitely is coming for next week if we get to this coming weekend and we're still saying the same kind of thing. So that's where we're at right now. If you're a winter weather fan, you certainly are going to love this pattern all across the country. If you're not a winter weather fan, you are going to hate this pattern. And there's a lot of big time cold here. So even if you are a winter weather fan, you might end up hating this pattern anyways, because this is going to be quite a bit of cold, and it may last as we go throughout January. Don't really see an end point to this type of setup at this point just yet. So we'll have to see how things play out. So that's going to do it for now. And not quite sure when I'll update again, but probably some point in time this week, and it'll be on the cold, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. We'll do another one, so check back in on that.